Hi guys, can everyone hear me? Yeah, that's good. So I've been lucky enough to be invited along today, and this is my third segment, each one focused around different topics. The first one was more about the DNA of Nobody's Child, our sustainability credentials, and how that was instilled through our brand and our culture. The second session was a little bit more intimate, primarily focused around licensing, some of the things that we're doing as a brand, some of the things we're doing as a technology business. And this one is a particular deep dive specifically on digital product passports. So first, let me set the scene with how I ended up here. So as the founder of Nobody's Child, I am a brand, I am a retailer. Our responsibility as a brand is something that's very close to our hearts. So we don't call ourselves sustainable, but we certainly practice what we preach. In technology, I'm also the founder of a business called Fabacus. We set out to deliver visibility in the supply chain. It was an ambition of mine 10 years ago, and Fabacus was my own little sandbox in technology. And then I discovered this huge opportunity in the $360 billion licensing industry that these big IP owners, people like Disney, Warner, Universal, um, they license their IP out to hundreds and thousands of licensees around the world across different categories. And if you ask any of these licensors to give you a structured product catalog, they can't. In their defense, licensing has always been passive income, high margin, and it's because they don't make and sell their own products. It's never been a real concern around the quality of the data. Fast forward 10 years, with incoming regulation, actually even licensors, IP owners, under their scope 3 obligations will need to know their products and everything about their products, where they're made, what they're made of, the environmental impact. So for me, about 3 years ago is where the stars aligned, that as a brand, really on an ambitious trajectory to be one of the most responsible value brands globally, it transpired that the technology we built through Fabacus could absolutely lend itself to fixing this problem for vertical retailers. And of course, because I had my own brand, I had the added advantage of leading this initiative. So we were one of the first brands globally to lead with the implementation of scalable digital product passports. So that's what I'm going to present you today. This is a real passport in the real world across most of our product. We set out to try and have every product in production with a passport by the end of last year. We just fell short of that, but we're pretty confident we'll get there by the end of March. Huge undertaking. We're now talking thousands and thousands of SKUs across multiple categories and suppliers, but hopefully we'll cover the detail and then I'll open up the forum to any questions. I'm trying to make this session as informative as possible. I don't really like talking at people, but I'm going to have to, unfortunately, for the first 15 minutes or so, and then we can share the forum. So first, the current state. If you're a retailer or you're a brand, of course, you're responsible for manufacturing some of your products, maybe not all of them if you license your IP out. Regardless of that, the data lives in multiple systems within your own organization. It lives within your supply chain, and there's a whole host of partners, calculators, and other strategic contributors to the data set that is required to deliver a digital product passport. What we do at Fabacus is we help brands and retailers create what we call a compliant catalog, a single structured, trusted repository of all your product data in one place. So when you start thinking about scaling and implementing passports, that becomes a very, very complex challenge. If you start thinking about the big retailers that are multi-category general merchandise, it's quite a daunting journey to go on. The good news is, as a technology vendor today, we're working with 7 of the top 10 in the UK and a few of the big global leaders. But as a brand, we've already gone through those pain thresholds to actually demonstrate that it's possible. So all of that data comes onto the platform. We go through a logic layer. We do a whole series of validations, some verification, and some authentication. So let me just translate that jargon for you. Validation is where we look at the state of the data. Verification is where we can trust another entity to tell us that what we've been told is correct or not. Authentication is where two parties agree. I've sent it, I've received it, great. And then, of course, for those of you that operate in retail or manufacturing, you're then still dependent on a physical audit to actually physically go and check that what you've been told is the case. Once you have all of that structured in one place, it enables your digital product passport. For us, we've put this on our products in the form of a woven label, a very traditional wash care label. It's the cheapest, most efficient way of implementing passports. Longer term, there is a counter argument for that, that they need to be there for the life cycle of the product. So people are experimenting with NFC so consumers can still engage with it. But for now, as a brand, we're going to run with this and for the foreseeable until the regulations actually defined over the coming months. The consumer scans it. The first experience the consumer should receive is that what's in their possession is reflected on that passport. So the image of the product, the description, and the composition are the attributes that we're most familiar with when we're shopping online. So we don't disrupt that customer experience. The consumer then, of course, as they start to go on the journey and they're scrolling through this passport, we then deliver the traceability. So here, what we've done is we've gone to tier 5. We've overcooked it as a brand. We've put the dye house, the mill, the yarn, the units that have contributed to this, any logistics between each of those sites. And then, of course, all of that data also feeds the calculators to work out the environmental impact, which I'll come on to in a moment. The regulation today is talking about disclosing tier 1 and tier 2. We've gone to tier 4 and 5. We want to try and stay persistent as much as possible at achieving that for all of our products. The passport, just for those of you that are not familiar with a digital product passport, what the regulation's trying to achieve here is allow consumers to make informed buying decisions when they're buying the product. So the easiest way to understand it, and the analogy I like to use, is the same as nutritional information on food. When we buy a sandwich today, versus 20 years ago, it was all about whether we liked the sandwich and it tasted good and we were happy. Now we pick it up, we look at carbs and calories and sugars and proteins, depending on whatever our goals are or not. And perhaps I should pay a bit more attention to that detail. But nevertheless, this is going to achieve the same thing across all the categories. And so the EU have defined a framework of 15 categories. In short, by 2030, every product sold in the Eurozone will need to have a passport that discloses a predefined data set about that product. And then as consumers, we will be able to go in and interact with a product, whether physical or online, and then make a decision. Now, how much do we care about that is a huge debate. We hear numbers of 60+% of consumers apparently will make more sustainable driven decisions. But then we see the success of huge retailers that clearly don't care about impact and yet perform incredibly well. So that's contradictory. Having said that, I think all of us would agree if you're presented with the same product with two very different environmental footprints, you would probably buy the one with the better one. And at the moment where we're flying blind, we can't even contribute to that consumer driving and that behavior. On top of the traceability, we've added trims, so any buttons, zips, anything else that features on it. We also use the space for any communication to our customers around any of our additional services, and I'll come on to circularity in a moment. But remember, this carrier is a unique carrier at unit level. So for us, every unique QR code on the product is individual to that product that's in your possession. And so when you think of it from a data perspective, what we know is where that code is. So we know what product it is, what category, potentially what partner, and a whole load of other information, which allows me as a brand or as a retailer to really engage with the consumer that has that product in their possession. That's a very powerful tool if it's curated and leveraged correctly. When you start thinking about circularity, I'm now in my customer's possession and I can give them the toolkit that I make available to them as a brand so proudly. Sorry, am I in your way? So I'll just step out a little bit. And then, of course, the footprint itself. So we've worked here with Worldly, the Higg Index. They're the most familiar. They're the leaders in the pack right now globally. And we worked out our carbon footprint, our water usage. We've actually done our energy usage. Um, we've included our recyclability of our products on the same carrier. So as we're scrolling through here, what I want you to understand is that there's over 180 data attributes that contribute to the creation and curation of this passport. And that is across different partners, systems, internally, externally. And so as a technology vendor, we do all that heavy lifting. But as a brand, you're accountable for what you're publishing in the public domain. And now this is going to become mandatory by law. So I'm already seeing most of the brands and retailers at scale start to get their ducks in a row pretty quickly, including rationalizing their supplier base. As some of the big guys have halved it. Now, what I don't like about that, of course, is we're going to kill some of the smaller businesses. We're going to lose creativity. I don't think that was ever the objective. But fundamentally, keeping up with this level of compliance and governance is going to be demanding for everybody that's contributing. We've included durability. We believe that it will feature heavily in the regulatory framework. We've worked out, aligned with what our standard testing requirements are. Again, we believe that the framework today is about 95% defined, so there's still a little bit that needs to be polished. Two members of my Fabacus team are part of the Surpass expert groups, which is the governing body essentially responsible for defining the standards. But of course, as a brand, on the brand side, our head of sustainability lives and breathes this too. So we're quite lucky because it's two of my businesses collaborating to unlock this. But it also means that I have quite a lot of people with a heavily vested interest in making sure that we're leading the pack. So again, I can't stand by what we're presenting as a definitive framework, but we're preempting what we know and understand, and we know we're not far off. Care instructions we're all familiar with in terms of consumer behavior, but here we also give any instructions or guidance to the consumer, anything that we believe will help extend the life cycle of the product, and of course add value to the consumer and their experience. And then we also disclose any testing or integrity information. We want to be forthcoming here, but to a degree here, we're marking our own homework. So now what we're doing is we're working with the partners that issue this certification to validate whether what we're claiming as a brand is in fact correct or not. Now, I know it is because of what we're doing, but my consumer doesn't. But we're going to get to a place where the third parties that issue that test integrity information or factory audits, they will be able to validate that. And similar to a verification on the social channels, you'll have the same sort of system when it comes to product data being published in the passport. All of this is great, but there is some science to it. There is a data model, there's a structured data format. We create all of our own identifiers on our platform, and then we generate the serialized keys. We align with a global standards body, GS1. We create the GS1 digital link for every individual product. That's also fundamental to the framework. GS1 are obviously the authoritative body when it comes to supply chain standards. So making sure that we align with all of these different players, not only to conform to regulation, but actually unlock some of this potential is important. We've got tariff code, colors, size, and everything else. But of course, we've also got our circularity initiatives. So right now as a brand, we've got a repair partner, we've got a resale partner, we've got a rental partner, and we present the customer all of those options on their passport. So when they're at home and they're engaging with a product, if they want to trigger any of those initiatives or use any of those tools, it's at their discretion and as flexible as possible. Finally, whilst doing all of this heavy lifting, it's, from my perspective, there's a huge misconception that this regulation and compliance is hard work. And actually, if it's embraced correctly and implemented correctly, I believe it's an incredibly powerful tool. Now, I'll stand by that for two reasons. One, because we've done it. Two, because we've already seen the loyalty of our customers grow. She's coming back, she's spending more, she loves our honesty. We get the feedback through our social channels, our customer service. So we know that it's been very well received. So there is definitely a very demonstrable return on our investment for implementing this, but we've still managed to turn it into a powerful tool. through our consumer engagement. So what we've done here, very simply, we offer the customer an incentive or reward to engage with us. Now, if you think about my brand, Nobody's Child, we're only responsible for about 55, 56% of our sales today, selling directly to the customer. So we only know, theoretically, 56% of the people buying my brand. The other 44 are buying it across all of my other channels. I would love to know who they are. I would love to know who she is, and I would love to be able to give her a better experience. This is how we do it. So here we give them an opportunity not only to engage with the product and learn everything about that product, but actually register and participate so we can treat her like a true customer of the brand that's known to us. So when you layer the metrics of this engagement to all the other behavioral traits that we've seen and all the KPIs, that's where it becomes an incredibly powerful tool. And this is where, for me, I've had the comfort, the conviction, and the confidence to really drive the team in making sure that every single product that we produce as a brand has a passport and has this capability attached to it. So that's the passport. We do have a QR code for you to engage with, so feel free to scan it. I'll leave it up behind me through the course of the remaining time. This will take you to the experience. Like I said, if you bought one of our products today, everything I presented, it's a replica of that. So this is real. This isn't just a jazz hands. Um, we're very much committed to doing this and standing by it. And it's been very well received by our partners and our customers. So for those of you that are responsible or in brands or selling products or even manufacturing products, I strongly suggest that you embrace it. We're seeing those that are, and we work with some of the largest suppliers in the world. They're already seeing an advantage when dealing with their customer base. So you can do that in your own time. I'm going to open up the forum now for questions. I appreciate DPPs are quite comprehensive, so you'll probably get more value by asking me anything that I no doubt have missed. So over to you guys. Any questions? Okay.
So, thanks, Andrew. So one of the things that's quite interesting about DPP is the fact that you need to trace right all the way back upstream. So how have you found it with some of those suppliers that obviously overseas somewhere, maybe not as familiar with standards? What's that been like dealing with them? How have you managed to get that information?
So we launched our first DPPs about 18 months ago, and it was a complete nightmare. Nobody wanted to know, nobody understood it, they'd never heard of it. Um, that was an education cycle for my own team. That was an education cycle for our suppliers. Actually, when you fast forward 18 months, we're now a well-oiled machine in terms of our process. Our suppliers know that this is what we need from them. We've created a standardized way of capturing that information, and we've given them adequate comfort to appreciate that this isn't just the Nobody's Child initiative. This is a tsunami that's en route. And actually, if they want to be here in 5 years, they've got to start to conform. But it's a collaboration. You know, we enter these relationships with our supplier base as a partnership. It's not just a transactional relationship. So they will also understand that by helping us achieve this and helping the brand perform, in turn, that should hopefully help their business with us grow. Now, we've added, of course, the fact that we've been on an amazing trajectory for the last 5 years has also been great for that self-perpetuating ecosystem. But I would say don't be fazed by the resistance, because that's only a short moment in time and there is treasure at the end of the rainbow. Any other questions? No? I, I did a good job. I know, there we go. I missed something.
Thank you so much. So on that passport, there's a lot of information, and you talked about how it's to help consumers make the right choices, sustainable choices. Um, from the data that you're getting back, are there certain things that consumers are interacting with that they want to see more of? Like, I know for me personally, like knowing how to recycle things is really important, and I think seeing that information, I'd be interested, but there's some bits I'd go over my head.
Yeah, well, that's very normal because it's very new. I mean, I'll give you a real example. When we were calculating the carbon and the energy in the water, obviously the question we were asking ourselves internally is, okay, this is great, but is this good or is it bad? We had no benchmark. There is no industry benchmark yet. So we tried to get things that consumers would understand. And the carbon footprint of that particular product at the time, I can't remember what it was. I think it equated to like 360 iPhone charges and 600 miles in a car or something. And I was like, okay, well, that's great. But now I'm going to scare the living daylights out of my customer. And that's actually going to be a deterrent. I don't want to lose sales. I am still a commercial entity. And so how do you go through this effort and then do it and educate the customer, not only in what they need to know, but then what the good, the bad, the ugly is still quite a hard balance to strike. What I will say is, every customer has a very different view. Some care about circularity, some care about impact, some care about traceability and country of origin. Some are just grateful to get the information they need to be able to wash their product better or extend the life cycle. Repair has been good for us. All of these initiatives that we're doing them with the right intent and the right conviction. But I wouldn't say that we're doing them through a commercial lens. We're not going to make our money through our repair centers or our relationships with those guys. But doing that does feed the beast. It shows that as a brand, we're genuinely trying to improve and make things better. And that in turn feeds loyalty, feeds customer behavior, feeds brand equity, and does come back in the form of sales at some point. So, a lot of people ask me all the time for the silver bullet, how have we made the brand successful? And I can't. If I knew that, then obviously I'd be consulting most of the brands and retailers globally. I don't think there is a silver bullet. There's an array of probably 10 or 12 fundamentals that you've got to get right. And if you choose to back your responsibility as a brand, then all of these things become important. And so we get mixed feedback. And at the moment, consumers haven't got a real focus, but they've got an understanding. The more things that are coming into the public domain and educating us on the art of the possible becomes more powerful. But I suspect if everybody here scanned a passport, they would all gravitate to different points. And I think that's still a way away before we actually recognize what it is we're looking for. Any other questions?
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
My question to you is, do you see systemic integration of DPP into existing ERP or PIMDAM solutions being used by enterprise level customers, and whether that will be able to drive a wide scale adoption of this feature?
So you've done me a real favor asking that question, and I didn't plant her, by the way. So you've teed me up nicely. So the whole premise of our proposition at Fabacus, we position it as data as a service. And the reason we do that is because technology on its own can't solve the problem. It has to be cultural, it has to be adopted, it has to be an education, and then of course it needs the relevant resource. So at Fabacus, the way we create what we call the compliant catalog, we have an onboarding team, we have a data assurance team, we have a data governance function, and all of these people play different roles in creating the data set that will enable this capability at scale. So back to your question around existing systems are not fit for purpose. It doesn't mean they're bad or they're wrong, but they're not fit for purpose. ERPs have a role. PIMs, MDMs have their role. PLMs have their role. Everything within an organization or a tech stack or whatever language anyone understands, they're all there for a specific function or part of the workflow. When you think about DPPs, you need everything that gets published to a public domain to be as accurate as you feel comfortable being accountable for. Now, what that means is everything that you just saw there across all your suppliers, all your products, all of your internal systems, all of their systems, including spreadsheets, needs to have gone through a series or a sequence of events to get it to a point that when you press play and it goes live on your site or in your store, that what you're presenting is 100% accurate. An ERP and a PLM or a PIM or MDM cannot do that job. So our solution sits independent of all your existing systems. So we're non-intrusive, we don't replace anything, but we come in and we're complementary. We work with everything that you have. We bring it in, we validate it, we structure it, we make sure that it does everything it needs to do. And at the moment you put a product live, that code is then populated with all of the best quality data that we've managed to achieve to that point. That helps mitigate risk and it helps give you comfort as a brand and a retailer. But we don't exist because we're not a solution looking for a problem. It was a case that it transpired that what we built to solve the problem in licensing, which is probably and arguably the most complex supply chain because it's your IP, but you haven't made the product, that it lends itself incredibly well to this. So it's not a criticism of the other vendors. What they do is great. They can't do what we do and we can't do what they do, but there is definitely a requirement for both. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
From a consumer engagement point of view, how are you inviting scans of the QR code and what are you communicating?
So the first time we did it, we decided that we were going to launch it with the second Fern Cotton collection because she's a great ambassador and has been for our brand. She is very authentic about her passion and aspirations from a sustainability standpoint. So it felt like the perfect landing strip for us. I put the codes in the entire collection and then I told my team what they're for. They tried to kick me out of the business, but then they realized they couldn't. So that was good news. And then they spent the next 12 weeks working with our partners, our systems, to bring all of this data together to achieve that. And so for us, when we're going to market with our DPP and all the information needed, we're looking at delivering an amazing experience. So we wanted it to look and feel beautiful. We wanted it to look and feel consumer friendly. But what we did, and part of that batch, is we didn't tell anybody that the passport was in the product because we were too scared. What if we get it wrong? We don't want to be sending the customer there. The next collection, we added a swing tag with a really nice call to action saying, look for your passport and you'll discover more about the product. And now, of course, we're much braver. So we've got it in our ECRM strategy. We put it in emails, on the packaging. I think we've even tried leaflets. So now it's in our best interest to drive the customer to the passport. So we've got a lot more assertive with how we do that. But in the beginning, we weren't so bold.
Hi there. So taking back to these kind of sandwich analogy, as it were, that
Yep.
we used, that leaves with a traffic light system, maybe 4 or 5 key KPIs. Are you ever going to end up at a stage where that's on fashion items, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's not our role. As a brand, I advocate it. As a technology vendor, we will embrace it. But we're not in an authoritative position to define it. So I do know 2 or 3 people that are out there already trying to create the framework for that. What makes it green, amber, red. I think the reality is for the next 2 or 3 years, until we get enough data to start benchmarking, it's going to be really hard and probably a little bit unreasonable to penalize people with red and amber if actually we don't know how they benchmark against the rest of the world. So I think it's still a bit in its infancy, but there are certainly people doing it. And absolutely, I see a role for consumers. As consumers, we want to make as seamless a decision as possible. And that's something that we all recognize. So it is coming. I know people doing it. I just can't tell you what horse to back quite yet. We have to embrace all of them.
Anyone else for a question?
All good?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thanks,
That was
guys.
brilliant.
That was
Thanks so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.